I've been following this chick, Treasure, okay, the White Queen, who's a black chick that thinks she's white. Although she's probably doesn't really think she's white, but she's an odd girl, okay? Now, what I want to point out is what is uniquely similar with blacks and whites is blacks and whites do not want to be what they are, okay? Now, this is interesting. Now, you see this very pronounced in the blacks with, for example, the black Israelites, blacks claiming to be the indigenous Americans, blacks claiming to be, the people that founded Europe, all sorts of kooky stuff. But if you name it, blacks claim that that was them. Blacks claiming to be ancient Egyptians, that's my favorite. The thing with the ancient Egyptians is obviously the DNA says that they're Semitic, okay, and also that they seem to be similar to the British, okay, of all things, the British. But the blacks refuse to believe this because, after all, they had to be black. They're in Africa. Of course, everybody knows that there are a lot of Semites in Africa also, such as the Berbers and such. But the point is that blacks cannot tolerate understanding their own limitations as a people. One of the easiest ways to prove this is how come there is not a black civilization anywhere on the face of the earth that has reached the level of ancient Egypt. And ancient Egypt, mind you. We're not in ancient times, okay? And they'll say, well, it's the wicked white man that's keeping them down, but one must take into consideration if blacks are so superior to whites, how is the wicked white man keeping them down? Now, with white folks, you see a refusal to accept who they are as a people, and you see individual whites like Rachel Dolezal pretending to be black, or Sean King, the guy they call Talcum X, pretending to be black, and you see Elizabeth Warren pretending to be Native American, and you see a lot of white people wanting to be anything but white. In fact, you see this exemplified in the Christian identity movement that sees the white race as the Israelites, when that's so clearly not just the white race, but the Anglo-Saxons as the original Israelites, and that the Jews, basically the black Israelites, but with white people saying it instead of black people. Okay, essentially that's that. Okay, and the reason this is because white people have been made to feel guilty about what they are, and black people can't accept the limitations of their own cultural achievement. What's funny is, what people need to understand is, although we come from our ancestors, we are not our ancestors. And this is the thing that you see. When white people embrace whiteness, they embrace past whiteness. They're not embracing themselves as people. A lot of people do not understand why I embrace Pan-Americanism or post-racialism or things of that nature. Some people might even consider my looking into indigenous American culture to be cultural theft or a denial of my own whiteness. I assure you it is not. It is actually just an interest I've had, especially in the Mesoamerican people, particularly the Aztecs and the Maya, but more recently the Inca, because there was a young lady that happened to be part Incan, and I grew interested in the Inca through her. The interesting point is, my interest in Mesoamerica happens to be how can I utilize this to better myself through the pre-Columbian diet and also pre-Columbian lifestyle. This is what's interesting too. A lot of people that embrace these ideas, be they, say, yoga or Ayurveda or these things, they will embrace the craziest possible incarnations of these things, instead of looking at what is practical and what is useful. For example, many people that look into Native American culture, they look into the Native American religion or shamanic practices, but very few of them actually care to look into things like how to improve health outcomes through embracing a pre-Columbian diet and these things. And this is what needs to be understood. There's nothing wrong with exploring mythology as long as you understand that it's mythology. This is one of the biggest problems that people have. There's nothing wrong with... See, this is what bit National Socialist Germany in the butt, is they created this D&D artificial reality with an artificial history that artificially bolstered the Germans into thinking they were superior to all other people, which wasn't true. And this is the problem you have more so with the African Americans, but also with this new wave of the alt-right. For example, the Chichapoya. The Chichapoya were possibly white folks that inhabited Peru, okay, alongside the Inca, okay, but they probably, the more I look at it, they probably weren't white. Like the Ainu of Japan and parts of the Russian territories appear to be Caucasoid, but upon understanding DNA evidence, we find out they're actually Australoid. And now we know that there's Australoid DNA in South American indigenous populations. So my assumption is probably that the Chechapoya, if we ever find out more about their DNA, we'll probably find out they're very similar to the Ainu and had Australoid DNA, or perhaps were other mutations that caused them to look more Caucasoid than Mongoloid. But my point being is this. What's interesting is the unique thing shared by blacks and whites in America is a refusal to embrace who they are and what they are. And it's very hard to be comfortable with oneself if you can't even be comfortable with what you are.